Welcome to the Liberating Joy and Learning podcast. I'm Verena Beckstrand, and last time we learned about growing desires, which are the first initial sparks within us that prompt us to seek learning and growth. And we gave an overview of primary lenses, and these are perspectives through which we can understand fundamental and essential processes or principles in order to fulfill our growing desires. And then we started discussing wondering shamelessly, which we'll continue to talk about today.
Right. As Verena mentioned last time, we discussed wondering shamelessly. Now, wondering shamelessly starts with asking lots of questions. As we wonder, we should suspend expectations and search with our hearts or intuition for new opportunities. So what does that mean to suspend expectations when we wonder? And we had a discussion about this last night, trying to decide exactly how to explain this.
Right. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, ever since I've been using these principles.
Right.
But it's difficult to explain to somebody else
Right.
what it is I do. But essentially, we want to tune out what the culture or society
Right.
tells us that we should be learning. We want to tune out what other people are telling us
Right.
to learning. And I was actually, even just this afternoon, I was thinking, suspending expectations, wondering is all about thinking about whatever it takes so you can understand your growing desire better.
Right.
I think that sometimes we have these desires for change and growth, but until we wonder about them, until we ponder, until we start putting those things into words,
Right.
we may not really understand it. And it's so important to just think about it, right?
Right.
And start putting it into words. Start, making it a reality for yourself so that you can understand it better.
Right. So when we say wondering shamelessly, you've been thinking about what you want to study, where you want to send your learning, what direction you want it to go. Whether it's I want to be a better disc golf player, or I want to be a better guitarist, or I want to be a better landscape architect, or I might want to be a better parent. When we start wondering shamelessly about what that looks like for us, like if we focus on I want to be a better landscape architect, what does that mean for me? That's my profession. I'm a landscape architect by profession. What does that mean to me to be a better landscape architect? And I start wondering and ignoring what the expectations from the profession, from schools, from other people think that is. That's where we're talking about suspending expectations. You don't care. Well, you're ignoring those expectations to find out where you want to take your learning, what direction that learning needs to go.
Right.
Without any outside influences. And that's what we mean we're suspending expectations. You want to get rid of all the outside influences. This is your learning desire. This is your direction. This is where you want to go, not where anybody else wants to go. An example that I always go back to is I listened to a talk by, I can't remember what his name is. He founded the Franklin Institute, but he was talking about Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin had come up with these 11 governing values that he wanted to focus on throughout to better himself. And he gave the list to a friend of his and he said, well, you're missing one. Well, what am I missing? You're missing humility. And so, okay, I'll put that on humility. And so as Benjamin Franklin would go through these, working on these different governing values, he'd get to humility and he would fail all the time. When he realized that's not his. That wasn't his. That was somebody else's expectation what the governing values should be, not what he should be. And so
Right.
he got rid of it because he was not a humble man. He was.
I don't think so. Right? Well, and you can take a different perspective. Like, okay, so when you want to learn to be a better landscape architect, that means something different now than
Exactly.
it did 10 years ago, than it
Exactly.
did a year ago,
Right.
than it does for you in the style of landscape architecture that you do versus anyone else in your office.
Right.
And so it's so important to understand your growing desires. And it's not that, we're crazy with it, like that you're going to do crazy things. It's just that you're doing what
Right.
you're learning what you want to learn
Right.
now.
Right.
Right. And that can be problematic because sometimes growing desires change, right?
Right, over time.
But just wonder, right?
Yeah. What we're talking about here, this wondering shamelessly, is get rid of the expectations. Just wonder about it, think about it, ponder it.
Right.
And that will take you to the next step. We'll get that in a minute. When you take time to ponder, that also brings emotional healing. Verena quotes from the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. She says, the reward for attention is always healing. This healing and all the wondering we do prepare us for the rest of the primary lenses. And so the good question to ask, why does giving something attention help us heal? What is that? You put that quote in there. I asked this last night.
Yes,
Why did
right.
you put that quote in there? What does that mean?
Right. So when you give something attention, I think we definitely we understand it better.
Right.
Right. And when we understand our growing desires, maybe sometimes, we have a desire and we feel like it's, like we talked about earlier, we don't really suspend expectations, and we kind of feel like it's maybe not a desire that we should have.
Right.
And so if we understand that growing desire and that we give it value, then we can reduce the shame. Then we don't have that sense of nagging.
Right.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't do this.
Right.
If we really understand what we want out of our learning, and we've suspended expectations, right? Then we have healing, because our growing desires are very important to our internal psyche. And
right.
Clearly this is a passion of mine, right? I love learning, and I know that when we are good at learning, the world is a better place, right? And if we're not really learning what we want to learn, then life is not right.
Right.
Things are just sort of off.
And when you suspend expectations and you allow yourself to heal from past, or whether or not you feel like you were a failure in the past or whatever, you get rid of those and you feel like, okay, I can make progress. I can become better at this no matter what happened before. And that's what we're talking about here, about we're suspending expectations. That allows us to heal and feel better about us. And then that gives us the excitement and the energy to move on with that growing desire.
Right.
To keep moving on. To
right.
The next.
Right. Life has
right.
new meaning, right? And if you're not growing, if you're not progressing, you're in a self-imposed prison.
Right.
And, we all know what prison might feel like. We can all imagine that, just how difficult that be. And when we liberate that learning, right, that's the whole purpose of this, is that we liberate our joy, we liberate peace, because we're headed in a direction that
we want to be going.
Yeah,
yes,
that
exactly.
we want to be going, and we're not stuck. And we're getting rid of all of the extra trappings. And there's more things we can do to liberate our learning. But this is the beginning, right? This is the start. And every primary lens has an element of wondering shamelessly. And so, just play around with ideas. If you want to do something, play around. I want to be a better disc golf player. Well, what does that mean to me? And you just start asking more and more questions.
Right.
And, it means that, because every time we go, we're asking questions. How can I improve?
Right.
How could that throw have been better? I'm constantly asking Rob.
Yeah.
Occasionally I give him tips. Not very often. But I'm constantly asking this questions shamelessly, right? I'm not worried about winning a tournament, because that's clearly not my goal.
Right.
But when I'm constantly wondering, how can I improve? And Rob will, sometimes give me tips, and sometimes something will come to me and I'll do it. But it's just, this is a skill you're going to use for every element of your learning process. So wondering is a great choice for when you're too worn out for any other kind of progress, or you're just not sure which way to go next with your growing desires.
Right.
So we all have those times where we're just tired. And so just take the time to wonder. Just take time to vent, or whatever it is you need to do to just talk about your growing desires. Even if you're not necessarily wondering, you're just kind of spewing, and I really wanted to do this, and it's not working out. And then as you put those things into words, and I'm a psychotic journaler in some ways. And so journaling is a wonderful way to deal with that. But, it's just, it is that kind of default. If you can't do anything else, if you can't do any of the primary lenses, then wonder about your learning.
Right.
Okay. As we suspend expectations and ask lots of questions and look at life through new eyes, we can find healing, and we begin to see and feel more peace with lots of things, right? So we can, as in some of the elements that we talked about in the previous section, we have more peace with experimenting and playing around with ideas. Okay, I'm still uncomfortable with this, but I'm okay, because at least I'm wondering about it. I'm making steps in that progress. We can let go of what isn't helping us grow, expectations or, different things. And we can hold on to what is helping us grow. So the relationship I have with Rob, or my son when he plays with us occasionally, that's a positive relationship for me when with disc golf. Now, with my son, I don't ask him. There's certain things I don't ask him about, right? Because he doesn't have the life experience or whatever. So, work with what is working for you.
And everybody's this phase of learning, wondering, is going to take on. It's going to look different for everybody, and that's okay. The idea is you're letting go of I think the key factors is you're letting go of those expectations. You're letting yourself heal, and you're letting yourself get ready to move on to the next step. and grow with whatever your learning desire is.
Right. So take time and wonder about any growing desire that you have. It doesn't matter whether it's, something tangible or something intangible. Wonder. Take time and wonder about those. I encourage you to write it down, but even if you just kind of talk to somebody about it, that's cool too.
And that's why we talk about wandering shamelessly so much, because it is very important of the primary lenses. In fact, we're not quite done talking about it. We're almost. So next time we're going to talk about how wandering shamelessly prepares us for the next primary lens or the next step of claiming our learning. So stay tuned. We'll finish up this section about wandering shamelessly and move on. In the meantime, you can send us your questions or comments to learningliberated@gmail.com. And if you get a chance to, go ahead and like our podcast. I'm not exactly sure where we have this posted. Verena has posted it a couple different places. Wherever you're listening to us, if you can go ahead and like us, that would be great. If you want to share it with somebody, if you think what we're talking about and discussing has value to somebody else, go ahead and share it and let us know your thoughts. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.